Welcome to the Tidewater Stream Podcast. This podcast will cover the life of our Savior, Jesus Christ, from the lens of the four Gospels. Sit back, have your Bibles open, and enjoy this podcast.
Alrighty, so our first reading for Monday is Luke chapter 8, verses 4 through 18.
Okay, Luke 8, 4 through 18. Now when a large crowd was coming together, and those from the various cities were journeying to him, he spoke by way of parables. The sower went out to sow his seed, and he sowed. Some fell beside the road, and it was trampled underfoot, and the birds of the air ate it up. And other seed fell on rock, and as soon as it grew up, it withered away, because it had no moisture. Another seed fell among the thorns, and when the thorns grew up with it, they choked it out. Another seed fell into good soil, and growing up, it produced a crop 100 times as great. And he said these things. As he said these things, he would call out, "He who has ears to hear, let him hear." And his disciples began questioning him as to what this parable meant. And he said, "To you it has been granted to know the mysteries of the kingdom of God, but to the rest it is in parables, so that seeing they may not see, and hearing they may not understand." Now the parable is this: the seed is the word of God, and those beside the road are those who have heard. Then the devil comes and takes away the word from their heart, so that they will not believe and be saved. And those on the rock are those who, when they hear, receive the word with joy, and these have no root. They believe for a while, and in time of temptation fall away. And the seed which fell among the thorns, these are the ones who have heard, and as they go on their way, they are choked with worries and riches and pleasures of life, and do not bear ripe fruit. But the seed in the good soil, these are the ones who have heard the word in an honest and good heart, and hold it fast, and bear fruit with perseverance. Now no one, after lighting a lamp, covers it with a container or puts it under a bed, but he puts it on a lampstand, so that those who come in may see the light. For nothing is hidden, that which will not become evident, nor anything secret, that which will not be known and come to light. So beware how you listen, for whoever has, to him more shall be given, and whoever does not have, even what he thinks he has, shall be taken away from him.
Awesome. So that's our first day's reading, Luke chapter 8, verses 4 through 18. Parable of the sower, Luke's account. Now, I'm going to try to ask this question better. And last week I tried to ask it, but I didn't do a good job of it. And the question I was trying to ask, what did you say?
I'm sure you did fine.
You think so? Yeah. Well, I think I could have made it a little bit clearer. Specifically, this one is, I really enjoyed your sermon, was it last Sunday? Because you preached about this, and you had a really good point about taking care of the soil and seeing the soil how God, how God sees it, and seeing people's hearts the way God sees it. That's one of the big takeaways. Yeah. One of the questions I wanted to ask is so is there a context where when you are talking with a person or preaching the gospel about to someone, and you can see that, oh, hey, these are some of the things that they're going to struggle with when they become a Christian. Yeah. How do you help them through? Like, how do you help the seed that grows but is choked up by all the things of life? How do you help them out of that? Or is this parable just saying, like, these are the four soils, this is what happens, find good soil? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's certainly not find good soil, because it's very difficult to tell. The sower is indiscriminate in the sowing, so we just sow everywhere. Got it. And so that's why Jesus says this is the parable of the sower. And in my sermon, I said it's more accurately called the parable of the soils, and David was giving me a hard time because Jesus called it the parable of the sower. Sure. Fair enough. I'll yield to King Jesus, no trouble whatsoever. Yeah. But the reason I focus not so much on that I'm focusing on the soils, it's a conversation about soil. Yeah. But it's also really by way of to encourage us to sow and to understand when we sow, why do some people not take up the seed? What is causing the problem? And so I'm not bothering at all with what kind, assessing someone's, before I throw them the gospel. I don't look to see what kind of soil it is, because not really. There's a sort of sense in which you do, but it's mostly like, how can I best throw this? Sure, yeah. If the cares of the world have someone choked out before they've even received the gospel, you can just tell they're harried by life. Sure. That actually can become an in for the gospel, weirdly enough, because they feel overwhelmed a lot of the time. Okay. They're really busy and all that. So then you can start talking about peace. Okay. Where does a peace that surpasses all understanding come? Now, it's really difficult to talk about peace if you have none. Mm-hmm. So I recommend getting the peace that surpasses understanding, brethren. Interesting. Okay. Right? Yeah. Because it's hard to give someone the thing you don't have. Sure. But so however, if I sow the gospel into someone and they get baptized, let's say,
Yeah.
but they'll again, we often are thinking about how to make disciples, right? That's like a thing. It's definitely a theme for 2026.
Sure. Yeah.
Becoming better disciples,
Yeah.
and journeying with Jesus. So I meet somebody in the church and they don't come to church. That's a strange thing. Like Christians not coming to church doesn't make sense. It's like these two things don't compute. But
Sure.
so, but a lot of times it's the cares of the world that get them. Or they're under trial and they're just worn out. So you kind of have to figure out what it is.
Okay.
But how do I get them off of that place? Well, they have to understand the value of Christ. They have to understand that actually the thing that they're laboring over, the cares of the world, riches, those are all temporary things. And that's a discipleship problem. That's actually fundamental. And so you have to get people deeper into the eternal.
Sure. I gotcha.
You have to get them into the deeper eternal things.
Yeah.
And so how do you do that? Well, each person is going to be a unique challenge because if the cares of the world really have you, how do you convince a man who's making $75, $100, $150 an hour that his time is better spent reading the Gospels? Like if he's loves money, he's gonna go make money. So this is a love problem.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you foster deeper
That's interesting.
love?
I really like the way you broke that down, is that you show them the thing that they're missing, right? Because when you look at the different types of soils, right, the one those by the wayside are the ones who hear, then the devil comes and takes them away, right? So what's the opposite of what they don't have that they may be looking for? Well, protection. Do you want protection from Satan? Do you want protection, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Cares of the world, right? You can fill in the blank that, and they say, "Oh, it's Jesus," and then you point them to that.
Right.
Then you have
the one who's being like blown away.
Exactly.
He needs the armor of God.
Exactly. Yeah. Correct. So it's almost like you go through that and find out, hey, obviously the easiest answer is just say Jesus for all of it. But as you said, just saying Jesus.
Just do Jesus.
Yeah. It's not
but it's going to be
actionable.
tailored to each person's problem.
Exactly.
And it's very, very individualistic. And we don't, or individualized, sorry, not individualistic, individualized. And a lot of times in the church, we want to think at systems level.
Sure.
And say, oh, what better program can we make? Or what better, clearly it's our Bible class training. No, it's actually our individual discipleship making.
Sure. Yeah.
Are you mentoring someone? If you're a mature Christian, firstly, a self-assessment of maturity is probably not super accurate. So better to have like your friends
like
who
3 or 4 people.
Right. Some other
give
people
you an
like understand that you are in fact that. But are you mentoring? Because making disciples is the mature Christian thing. It's like it's like when you mature as a human, physically mature as a human, and you get married and have children, you make more humans.
Sure.
When you mature as a disciple, you make more disciples.
Right.
And if you aren't making disciples, you're stunted in your disciplehood. Jesus goes and makes disciples. The apostles go and make disciples. So it's kind of a weird thing. And I don't say that to like condemn anyone who hasn't been doing that. This is just a statement of what is. This is not
this
like
is where you aspire to go to.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not shaking my fist at you. I'm more like, so as part of this process, you should have people in your life that you're sowing the seed in.
Right. Yeah.
And that's why, to whom much has been given, much is expected. And the people who are some of the most ardent disciple makers have been forgiven the most,
Sure.
because they're like, no, Jesus.
Yeah, they see the value in it.
So
yeah, no, I just love that. Yeah, because we can keep going on that vein, and like the ones on the rock, who are those who hear when they receive the word with joy, and these have no root, but believe for a while. Right. So these are the people who it's like you need to slow them down a little bit and just say, hey, do you really know what you're getting yourself involved into?
Absolutely.
Right. And obviously I'm not saying this is a one-to-one relationship, but these are like overarching categories of how to see this is where they're at, of how they're consuming this gospel. And here's ways we can help them. Obviously, 100%, all the time is not going to be the objective, because that's impossible, but it's giving us a category on here's a way to approach these people? What do they have, and what are they lacking, and show how Jesus can fulfill the thing that they're lacking.
Right. And I've met lots of people like the second soil who get really excited about hearing the gospel and the message. They get baptized, and then with very little provocation are they knocked off their feet.
Yeah.
Because they don't have any depth of root. And as teachers, we have to help them establish their base. You know,
Yeah, that's like someone who can't defend their faith.
Right.
Someone doesn't really know why they believe, right? Or it's just surface level. I don't want to go to hell. It's a good starting point, but you don't want to stay there forever, right?
Amen.
That's kind of how I'm seeing that one.
The way I like to liken that, especially you'll see this sometimes in young people who are raised in the church.
Sure.
Which is a funny thing to like. I put that in air quotes because it's sort of it sort of feels weird to say.
Exactly. Yeah.
And sometimes they don't actually know much, and so I liken that to, you know, their foundation is someone didn't lay the bricks straight.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
Christ might be cornerstone. Sometimes Christ isn't even the right cornerstone. Like they give them a different Christ. You know,
sure.
they don't really know who Jesus is. They just know that they were supposed to do X, Y, Z things.
Right. Yeah.
But they didn't actually get the cornerstone laid, and then the rest of the foundation laid straight. And so with those folks, that's actually a bit of an emergency.
Right. Yeah.
Because they don't have a base, and since they have no base, it's difficult to endure.
Right.
And so I kind of go into, you know, all hands on deck with those people and start laying those, because they love Jesus. Like they love this message. Something
Right.
about it is attractive to them, and so they're in. They're you know, like but it's urgent work. So you get to laying those bricks quick. Because they're open and receptive to having them laid. But I say that because if you don't do it in a timely fashion, you put them at risk.
Right.
And they'll see that you have an indifference to their state eventually, and that will be a real piece of pain for them later on. They will come to resent you for it.
Sure.
Typically. So it's it's super important to get the work done.
Right. Yeah.
Making hay while the sun's shining. You know, it's
Exactly,
like, you know,
yeah,
get
yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's don't take it for granted. It's actually quite a blessing to have someone who's wide open and interested. And so yeah, people are like, well, why would anyone ever neglect that? It's like, well, I've seen it done a lot.
Yeah, it's because it's things that people may not realize. Like, oh, I'm not right. It's very easy to overlook something you have no context from which to make the judgment from, and that's a lot of what we have to do is go into each other's shoes, because there's sins you struggle with that aren't the sins I struggle with, and vice versa.
Right.
And so that's why it's this getting to know each other very well, to know where we're coming from and why we would struggle with the things we struggle with.
Where the people I see who really get left out to hung out to dry that way are the new convert that someone. That people think someone is
like the one in this parable with the stony
ground, right?
Yeah.
So everybody thinks that someone is mentoring them, and no one is mentoring them.
Yeah.
You know, so let's say that we've got a family and a 15-year-old guy, you know, is baptized, and everybody just assumes that mom and dad have it, but mom and dad are doing diddly squat at home. He's a Christian in spite of mom and dad, let's say.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, that guy could die on the vine because he's not being fed at home, and he's only getting, you know,
2 hours,
90 minutes a week, you know, here. And this is why it's actually super important as a church that we live in community with each other. So it gets a lot easier for that young man to make mentoring alliances, you know. So like you're not a young man anymore.
No, I'm an adult.
You're an adult in middle age, in the happy place of middle age, dude. Love it while you got it. It's it's awesome.
I miss the 20s.
Yeah, being in your 30s is so much better. You're smarter and you're physically
more
still
pains
able.
now that I don't like. But anyway, continue
Right,
on your
whatever.
point.
But you know, you can imagine a 15-year-old youth. Because I don't tend to like teenage, because like teenager sounds, these are youths. These are young people, young adults. And if you're in a community with him, like he's just around, he's going to men's breakfasts and all that, and he sees in you, he's like, oh man, I love what Jared's about. And so he starts just hanging out with you. And we're used to being in community. It becomes very easy to be a mentor to him.
Right, yeah.
You know, you're not stepping on dad's toes, because maybe dad's not even paying attention, or doesn't even notice that what his son needs, because he doesn't know how. It's just also real. I mean, we're all coming from different places, and like you were raised in a very very loving family, and so you're used to kind of a certain dynamic.
Sure.
But maybe his father has no idea how to even be a dad.
Sure,
And you've had a role model that's better than his role model.
Sure,
And so
yeah.
there you go. You know, so you can pick him up and be like, hey bro, let's go do this thing. And let's go hit some CrossFit and jiu-jitsu, whatever.
Sure,
And
yeah.
he's like 15, so he's all about it. But while you're doing that, you're going to teach him the way. You're
Sure,
going to
yeah.
show him how to deal with failure, how to deal with tasks, how to like endure with life, how to think about Jesus more wholly. Like that's what we do. And that's that's deeper work than just sowing seed. We're getting into, full on discipleship. But that's how you handle this guy who has no root.
Sure,
is you
yeah.
become a root giver and making the root not you, but obviously
Right.
making the root Christ. So,
Exactly. No, absolutely. I think that's a good stopping point for that one, and I think we've got some good discussion over that. I just never thought of thinking of the parable of the sower in that way, of seeing it. Yes, this is what happens when they're not cared for and they're just left there, but
Yeah.
think of it as here's a couple of ways to categorize these things where someone can say, okay, we can help, try to mitigate those risks that they may encounter due to their unique circumstance.
the last thought on that,
Yeah.
as I heard an older preacher say, in the churches of Christ, we're pretty good at getting people baptized,
Sure.
but
yeah.
too often we hang them out to dry.
Yeah, true. I think it's a good classification. Alrighty, let's go to Tuesday's reading. We're going to continue on the parable talk, because one of the things we didn't mention yesterday was just this is a fulfillment of prophecy of Jesus speaking in parables, and so you're going to see that happen a lot, especially for I think this week's readings. I think does it come back later? I don't think so. I think this is the main parable chunk. So that's why Jesus is speaking these parables. It's fulfillment of prophecy. I think it's Isaiah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Isaiah. So on Tuesday's reading, we're continuing on that vein. We're going to have a new parable, the seed and the grain, and we're going to talk about what is Jesus referring to here, what is the lesson he wants his disciples to learn from, and what are the lessons that we can learn from as we read it. So we're going to start off. All right, Mark chapter 4, verses 26 through 34 reads, "And he said, the kingdom of God is as if a man should scatter seed on the ground, and should sleep by night, and rise by day, and the seed should sprout and grow. He himself does not know how. For the earth yields crops by itself, first the blade, then the head, after that the full grain in the head. But when the grain ripens, immediately he puts in the sickle, because the harvest has come. Then he said, to what shall we liken the kingdom of God, or with what parable shall we picture it? It is like a mustard seed, which, when it was sown on the ground, is smaller than all the seeds on earth. But when it is sown and grows up and becomes greater than all herbs, and shoots out large branches, so that the birds of the air may nest under its shade. And with many such parables he spoke the word to them as they were able to hear it. But without a parable he did not speak to them. And when they were alone, he explained all things to his disciples." Alrighty. So now we got this parable. Two parables. The parable of the growing seed and the parable of the mustard seed.
Yep.
So what are the some takeaways you see for us today and for maybe even them back then?
For sure, you have this. I love this parable of the growing seed, because you don't, like, when we sow seed in people's hearts, we don't really know what's happening.
Sure.
Like you toss the gospel to somebody and you don't know, well, when is that going to germinate? And I've said, before, I was all four soils at various points in my life.
Yeah.
And it was a progression of 15 years
Okay.
to get me from point A to point B. And I'm not quick is what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
Like, I'm no prodigy spiritually, anything like
Sure,
that.
sure.
But with that, you don't know. And so when it was time to, make the harvest happen, some people will notice that was the case. And so they took action. And that's how it is when you're working with someone. You don't know how long it will take for this thing to hit. So you just wait and you just keep going until you have reason to stop, either to harvest or they turn and rend you.
Sure.
And they make it clear. It's like, oh, it's time to stop.
Gotcha.
So the first parable feels like a parable about both patience and readiness.
Gotcha. Let's, before we continue on that thought, let's turn to Matthew 13 and let's read the other reference of this parable, and then we'll continue on with that vein of what you were saying there.
Okay.
So Matthew 13, verses 24 through 35.
Okay. And this is a little slight variation here.
Correct, yeah.
24 through 35, Matthew 13. He presented another parable to them, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while his men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went away. But when the wheat sprouted and bore grain, then the tares became evident also. The slaves of the landowner came and said to him, 'Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have tares?' And he said to them, 'An enemy has done this.' The slaves say to him, 'Do you want us then to go and gather them up?' And he says, 'No. For while you are gathering up the tares, you may uproot the wheat with them. Allow both to grow together until the harvest. And in the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, First gather up the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them up, but gather the wheat into my barn.' He presented another parable to them, saying, 'The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in the field. And this is the smallest of all the seeds, but when it is fully grown, it is the largest of the garden plants, and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and nest in its branches.' He spoke another parable to them. 'The kingdom of heaven is like leaven.'" Where am I stopping here?
You're stopping at 35.
Okay. "And he spoke another parable to them. 'The kingdom of heaven is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 seah of flour until it was all leavened.' And all these things Jesus spoke to the crowds in parables, and he was not speaking to them without a parable, so that what was spoken through the prophet might be fulfilled, saying, 'I will open my mouth in parables, I will utter things hidden since the foundation of the world.'"
Awesome.
Okay.
So we get other context from, that other
Right.
parable that we read in Mark of the parable of the seed, and we got a couple of extra.
Well, so
parables
this
there, too.
is actually a different parable than the parable of the seed. This
Oh,
is the
really? Is it?
parable
Okay.
of the wheat and the tares. And,
Okay.
And so they're different things because they're different messages. I mean, here we have the tares explained as well.
Sure. We're gonna
so
get to that. That's tomorrow.
So we'll talk about
Yeah.
the parable of the tares tomorrow. So then why do I call these different? Because the substance is different. That's the main thing. And really the takeaway would be different. It's like there's a time and a place with the parable of the seed. It's like it's when you're farming, you don't know when the sprouts
Sure.
will come through. And so like don't treat people as though like, if I plant a seed in you, I shouldn't be constantly digging at that. Like you wouldn't plant a seed and then pull it out and look at the roots and put it back in.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like it's just a stupid idea.
Yeah.
Right. And so he's trying
Uproot
to
it every time. Is
Right.
it working?
You're constantly
Is it
uprooting
working?
it. Right. And so he's telling you don't do that. And don't do that to people either. It's either they don't need that, and agitating them too much, and that's going to vary by person, but like
Right, yeah.
read their messages, pay attention to their signaling. And so there's that. Whereas the parable of the tares, like we'll get into tomorrow, we have then the parable of the mustard seed, which is obviously
a little goes a long way. Yeah.
right. So like think about the faith of a mustard seed, which is a thing said here, like you said, a little goes a long way. Having faith like a mustard seed is very focused faith. Mustard seed only produces mustard trees.
Sure.
Like
yeah.
that's it. It's got one job and it does it really well. And it starts small and it grows big because it's hyper focused on its one task. Basically, it's kind of the general gist of this thing. And so that's where we who are kingdom dwellers,
Right.
we need to be focused like that. And so when you see Jesus sprinkled throughout, say, have faith like
Right.
a mustard seed, and he's telling you be about your Father's business, be focused on that, and let that be the thing that governs you. It's super easy to be distracted,
Right,
But
yeah.
that's how you become the third soil, is getting overly distracted.
Sure. That's a good callback. What I also liked about this too is when you're reading it, these parables, and when you go all the way to the end, we haven't gotten to it, to like the end of Matthew and the Gospels, where Jesus, gives the command to the Great Commission to go in the world, making disciples. It's not this overbearing, message. It's this idea of like, keep planting those mustard seeds, and that's going to make the difference. Kind of like what you said. You can't keep, pulling up a root and checking on it. You can't keep nagging someone about Jesus, even though you may mean well, right? Because you care about their soul.
But it's annoying.
Exactly. And they're not going to respond well. But if you say, make some little comments that then they think about, then that's what will make them, grow. A lot of what caused my parents to, find the Gospels is when they were worshiping in different denominations, they just had one person just say, this denomination believes in this, and you can't find that in the Bible at all. And they're like, huh, that's weird. I mean, it took them like 15 years after that to eventually find the gospel and what the Bible actually says. But it's just that small comment. It wasn't like, I'm going to study with you. We're going to do a 7 to 8 week course to get there. Well, those are helpful. I'm not saying we
There's
can't do
utility
those.
in that, yeah.
But there's a time and place for it. And when you're trying to get someone to pique their interest about the gospel, sometimes it's just that small little, hey, people say it's this way, but in the scriptures, it actually doesn't say that at all. Oh, that's interesting. All right. And then you make the conversation may divert to something else, but that's the mustard seed.
Right. It's interesting you say that because I was reading an author who had left the Mormon church, and I used to live up where the Mormon church was founded in New York. Like I could literally drive past, Hill Cumorah and see the statue of the angel Moroni, and they used to have a pageant pre-COVID every year reenacting the events, which is interesting because the pageant would change over time as to what the events were, but that's the nature of the Mormon church. But there were protesters who would sit on the side of the road on the way to this pageant. Like I can picture the road because I know the road they're on, and they'd have like billboard trucks that would say, follow the Bible, not the Book of Mormon, and things like that, or read the Bible, not the Book of Mormon. And this one author, he saw that sign. He went to the pageant. He saw the sign that said, read the Bible, not the Book of Mormon, and thought, I never read the Bible. I need to read the Bible. And just reading the Bible popped him out of the Mormon church, because he realized that none of this stuff was in the Bible. And, so like, it's a funny thing. Like those people, and I actually know some of those protesters. Like I know some of those people who've done that work.
Sure.
And very sincere people, very, very intense. And they had no idea that their billboard truck was going to have that effect. They were hoping it would have that effect.
Sure. Yeah.
But that kind of goes back to the parable of the seed. You don't know even when you have planted a seed.
Sure.
And that's actually part of the thing. And so it's like, okay, here I am reading this guy's book about the Mormon church and how to deal with Mormons, and he's making a callback to those people, and they don't even know that they've had this impact on him.
Right.
But in the day of judgment, you will know. Like
exactly.
You'll find out. What was your work like? So, yeah, just keep sowing seed, man. Just keep working.
Exactly. Yeah. Having casual conversation, planning that, and then it may come up to something, it may not. But the whole point is that at least that just going back to the parable of the sower we talked about yesterday, at least the seed was cast and it will land where it may.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to the light. Let your light shine in such a way that it glorify God with it. Goes with it. Cool. What's next?
Absolutely. Alrighty. So now we're going to go to Wednesday's reading, and so we're going to talk about the parable of the tares explained. I think I read this one because you read the previous one.
36 through 43 of Matthew 13?
Yeah, I know you were excited yesterday to get to it.
Yes, of course.
Matthew 13, verses 36 to 43, and it reads, Then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples came to him, saying, Explain to us the parable of the tares of the field. He answered and said to them, He who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seeds are the sons of the kingdom, but the tares are the sons of the wicked one. The enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels. Therefore, as the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of this age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all things that offend and those who practice lawlessness, and will cast them into a furnace of fire. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear. Alrighty. Explained it pretty well, huh?
Yeah, it's a pretty good explanation.
Yeah.
Notice it's a pivot too from the parable of the sower. And there the soil are the hearts of men, and here the seed are the men. And because he's moving to end times stuff.
Sure, yeah.
The judgment.
Isn't that what they call eschatology?
Yeah, the
if
eschatology.
you're really a Bible nerd, that's what they say. Eschatology. If you want to sound smart, just
and
throw
I
out
never
that
understand why theologians feel the need to name these things this way. That they're like, well, the Greek word, no one cares, bro.
Exactly.
No one cares. Just say end times. It's fine.
Exactly. Speak plainly. I agree.
But yeah. But we had to speak plainly.
Yeah.
So he's pivoting out to this other thing, and I love the one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. Oh, okay. And the other part too that to take away on the tares is notice they ask, well, should we take the tares out? And he's like, no, because you'll tear up the wheat.
Right. Yeah.
doing that. So if he says this to the angels, don't take out the tares because you'll tear up the wheat. You know, we are in this, we are in a similar sort of position of like, we can't, I take this as a good warning to us to not try to be the traffic cops of the church.
Sure.
You know, where I'm going to put everybody in a microscope and go, you know, are you coming up to the holy standard of Jesus today?
Sure.
It's like, well, the answer is no.
Yeah.
Like universally, it's going to be pretty much no, because none of us are that perfect. So if I take the attitude that I have to go putting all my brothers through the gauntlet every month or quarter or whatever,
Yeah.
that's the wrong headedness, you know? And so, and I've seen people try this,
Right.
and as a result, they cause wild disruptions in the flock. The flock can never settle. And an unsettled flock of sheep cannot be productive.
Right.
They will not produce lambs. They will the lambs will die. It is, you know, it is a bad thing to do.
Right. Correct.
And so here you have a parable saying, don't do that.
Okay.
Which isn't to say don't discipline.
Right. That's different.
But that's a different thing. Discipline. We just practiced some discipline here, and that pattern is very different than a weeding pattern. Weeding is I'm chucking things. You ever I don't know if you've done any gardening. You've done any gardening?
I haven't, no.
Okay, so in a garden, when it gets real weedy, you'll start yanking weeds out, and sometimes good plants just get chucked out too, and you don't really worry too much about it because you're like, yeah, it's fine. We've got like, you know,
Sure. Yeah.
I've got 20 of these carrots. I lost a carrot, no big deal. But we're talking about souls,
Right.
and that is a big deal.
Sure.
And so we don't take a wholesale approach to those things. You know, discipline is very tailored to the individual sheep or goat or worse, and handling that individual as an individual. Whereas
I see.
the reapers here are like, should we do some serious gardening? And he's like, no, we'll wait. Because then at the end, you'll see the result. So I say that to say you're going to probably always have some hypocrisy in the church,
Right.
because that's just the nature of humans. And we don't, it is a worse thing to put everybody through the gauntlet. It means that the flock can't move at all. And then you handle the discipline matters as they appear.
Sure.
So as they bear fruit, they show themselves to be a tare, not wheat. And you're like, hey, what are you doing? You need to come back over to be wheat.
Yeah.
Because the time of judgment is not now, so you can repent and become wheat. That's the we're like the analogy breaks when it gets
Right,
down to the reality of the human condition. We can be turned, and that's actually Jesus's point. Until they're dead, until it's dead and done, they have opportunity to turn. And imagine if the angels of God were constantly plucking us out when we were not being wheat.
Sure.
You know, like, well, none of us would make it. The
Right.
judgment would be all the time.
Well, I think that's what's interesting about this parable, because it brought the question to my mind. Right, it was this idea that, hey, if you want to wait till everything's fully grown so you can separate the wheat from the chaff. But what I thought was fascinating about this is with the definition given here, it seems like it's Jesus and God and these holy hosts that are able to do this.
Yeah.
So then the question becomes, well, Jesus is perfect. Couldn't he perfectly identify who the wheat and the chaff are, and you don't have to wait, and you could? And at least he could then separate that beforehand. And the question becomes, well, then why doesn't he do that? Why wait when he's not like us humans who have to wait because we just don't know. He just knows it, and he can just separate immediately.
So where's your question?
The question is, why does he wait till it's fully grown, or why not just separate it immediately? Because he already knows. So it's a foreknowledge of God, his omnipotence.
Because that would actually create a series of judgment days, right? You'd be under constant judgment.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
that goes back to the flock won't thrive under that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody will understand. The thing about the judgment is we will all stand before him,
Right.
confessing him, knees bowed, and we will know that even we who are cloaked in him will know we are only there by God's merciful grace through his loving kindness expressed through his son. It's only the blood of his son and his sacrifice, right? So we will we all deserve that judgment. But there are some in our flock who are pretty anxious about it. And if there was not one judgment day, but the possibility of just constant, we'd break. Like psychologically, we can't take it. It's like it's a good reason why we don't know when we're going to die. Because if everybody knew their death date, we'd be pretty neurotic about it. You know, like if you knew you were going to die tomorrow, your life would be different. But the fact is Jesus actually wants your life to be different anyway.
Yeah.
Like you're like, oh, I'll get right with the Lord because my death date's not. I can party like it's 1999, which is
Sure.
Boy, that's an old reference.
Yeah, that is very. Even I remember that a little bit.
Yeah, we can party like like it's going to be a new millennia. Oh, but my death date's in 10 years, so I've got 9 years and 360 days, and I'll get it right in the last 5 days.
Sure.
It's like that's one mindset that people would do. The other one would be I'm so neurotic and freaked out all the time.
I see. I always saw it as two things, because I always thought it was an interesting question. If someone asked, well, God knows who's gonna be the wheat and the chaff. He doesn't have to wait till they grow. He can just take them out and do it now. But I think it does something that is inconsistent with what you see Jesus and God do in other parts of Scripture. When Abraham is being shown all the land of Canaan, one of the things that God says is He says, they haven't come to fulfillment yet, or their sins haven't been fulfilled just yet, right?
That's a good example.
And so there's this idea that yes, God could do that, but He doesn't. Why? Is because what grows is the choices we make every day, and so He wants us to know. Just like when your son does one thing wrong, you don't say, "All right, that's it, you're done." I'm not your father anymore. You don't do that. That's extreme. You say, "No, I'm gonna see where they go, and you see where they grow." And it doesn't mean you love them any less when they do take a path you don't take. You still love them, but that's when you make your judgments of this is the barriers that I have to do, or this is how close we can be. You only do that after they become full-fledged adults. And it's the same thing here, is that God's giving time for these people, just like He gave time for the people who occupied Canaan before Abraham, right? So that I forgot what the wording is, but it was a beautiful wording. It's like their sins haven't come into fulfillment yet. Basically, that they're not doing God wants, but God is giving them time. God's a long-suffering God.
Yeah,
so you see that here in
the
this
fullness
passage.
of their iniquity.
Exactly, the fullness of their iniquity. Thank you. Yeah.
And that's the phrase. But the same, and as you were saying that, there's also the other side where God wants to be able to make inputs, right? He maybe He does know all things, but He is giving you all the opportunity to make a different set of choices, to move differently, and so He's weeding in you, weeding the garden of your heart, if you will.
Exactly.
And if you reject Him over and over and over, in the day of judgment, you will know it's true. Like. Yeah. You'll be like, oh, I did blow that opportunity off.
Sure.
I did ignore that. You won't be in a state where you can argue. It'll be in a state of, that's true. Amen. You'll have to say it because it'll be absolutely true. And so I think about your your analogy, the analogy of being a father, being a parent. If my kid is acting up, but I don't know it, I can't make inputs into his life to adjust him, right? But if I do know it and I don't make those inputs, I'm not a particularly loving father.
Sure.
Right. But so let's say that, you're teaching my son, in a class, and he's acting crazy, but you never let me know. What happens? Well, he acts crazy and he becomes worse.
Right.
But the one who does shape him on the regular doesn't know what work he needs. Our Heavenly Father isn't at such a disadvantage.
Right.
So I think that's the great advantage of His work, is He can see us and go, no, see, we're going to have to work on that.
Exactly.
And so He starts bringing people into our world to nudge us in the direction we need to go for different reasons. And He brings the Scriptures to bear upon us and a bunch of other things, you know. And now, again, we can and do sometimes reject, like humans do reject His messengers and message, but okay, then they will say at the end, amen. Right. Say, I am wrong, and you should send me to hell. They'll agree. They'll hate it. They'll hate everything about it, but they can't deny it.
Sure. Yeah, and so I think that's one prong you get from that. If someone raises that question, is one, it's people's wickedness hasn't been fulfilled yet, like we referenced. I think the second prong is also God has given us everyone free will. They can choose, right? He wants people to choose to follow Him, and so giving that time is allowing people to cement the choices that they make in their life, whether it be for God or against God, right? Because that's just the whole message of the gospel, is we're here to give you a chance to choose. Do you want to follow God or do you not? And then if you decide not to, you have still a whole lifetime where you can make, change your path, you change your choice. God's a very long-suffering God.
Right.
And so that's the other thing. It would break the free will that God wants us to choose to love Him, not just be coerced and forced to love Him.
Absolutely.
So,
and then there's also the parable of leaven.
I think we did talk about that.
And the kingdom of, in this case, it's small things. Back to the mustard seed. It's small things becoming big things.
Right.
And so usually leaven is talked of in a negative way.
Exactly. Yeah.
in this case, it's not being negative. It's saying it's it's a sort of almost, you don't know, you can't see what's going on, and then
Right, yeah.
whoosh, it blossoms. And very, very often kingdom work is like that. You
Right,
don't know
yeah.
who's working and how, but
Sure,
when
sure.
they are working, you can feel it. And when they're not working, you can kind of feel it.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
and-
I love that you mentioned, because it's basically, it's an amoral concept, right? Just a little bit can transform a lot. We have to evaluate what's that end result of that. Is that, towards God's preferences or against God's preferences, right?
Yeah.
And that's where we can understand whether that's good. But also how we need to be critical in our own lives with even the little things that we do, so that we can make sure that, hey, you snapped, you're impatient this one time. Instead of blowing it off as, it's just one time, that could be the bad leaven that could then grow, and now you just get angry all the time.
Right.
Right. I'm not guaranteeing that, but it's having that type of lens in your life to look at the little things you do and say, oh, wow, like, if I maintain this mentality, then I'm going to train my mind. It's okay to be this way. And then I can affect my family negatively. I can affect, other parts of my life negatively, because a little goes a long way in both
Absolutely.
directions.
All right, cool. What's next?
Alrighty. So the next passage is going to be Thursday's reading, and that will be Matthew 13, verses 44 to 53. That's going to be the short parables. So I guess we're just going to talk about short parables. They're not very tall people, so they're just short.
It's my reading, right?
There you go. Yep.
Matthew 13:44 through 53.
53. Yep.
The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in the field, which a man found and hid again, and from joy over it he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking fine pearls, and upon finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had and bought it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a dragnet cast into the sea, and gathering fish of every kind. And when it was filled, they drew it up on the beach, and they sat down and gathered the good fish into containers, but the bad they threw away. So it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come forth and take out the wicked from among the righteous, and will throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Have you understood all these things? They say to him, Yes. And he said to them, Therefore every scribe who has become a disciple of the kingdom of heaven is like a head of household, who brings out of his treasure things new and old. Now it happened that when Jesus had finished these parables, he departed from there.
So we got three
There's a lot
short
there.
parables.
Boom, boom, boom. Yeah.
Yeah, just right
High
off the
speed.
bat. Hidden treasure, pearl of great price, and the parable of the dragnet. So basically, it's finding the things, focusing on the things that have actual value, and
Right.
determining what actual value is. That's what we see the summary here.
Buy the truth and sell it not. Mm-hmm. It's that. I love that he sells all that he has and he buys that field. It's that just he's going to do it everything he can to get it and to possess it. And the same thing with the pearl. They both have the same basic meaning. It's just like he's hitting it from these different angles because that's just how it's useful for us to think along those lines. Mm-hmm. Where are pearls found? They're found in the ocean. Where's this?
Yeah.
This it's in we have a field, we have an ocean. It's like because the kingdom of heaven is not in fields and oceans,
Right, yeah.
but it's everywhere.
It's almost like a small callback in a more positive sense to Matthew 5, somewhere in Matthew 5:30ish, where he talks about, if you lust after a woman, cut off your eye or cut off your right.
Yep.
That
Yep.
extreme terminology is just saying that, hey, understand that you need to remove everything that could prevent you from getting this.
Right.
And here he's talking about the opposite way, the
Right.
more positive, like, hey, any utility or anything you have that you can leverage towards this thing, use it, right? Because it's going to be worthwhile. And he's using terminology that people back then understood about, business and value and being a merchant. Same today.
Right.
It's what is the things that you have? What are the leverage that you have that you can help people find this pearl, or you can find this pearl?
Right.
Use it.
If you were going to start a business and you were like,
Right.
you're pretty sure this business idea was going to work. Like you had like really strong
Sure, yeah.
indicators. This was like a high probability success thing, but it required you to sacrifice a ton. Mm-hmm. Like we're talking long weeks, we're talking
Right,
long
yeah.
days, we're talking lots of money. We're talking like, you might even be leveraged
Right, yeah.
to do it. But you would leverage everything, not necessarily
Exactly.
just money, but like you put it all in, right? And I'm talking to Jared. I know that your answer would be yes, I would go all in on that.
Sure.
Like, right, because it's the thing. And the same thing is in the kingdom of heaven.
Exactly,
Because
yeah.
it's not just a probability, it's a certainty.
Sure,
Christ
yeah.
is certain. And so, it makes sense to go all in. And I have been an entrepreneur before. And so Danielle and I were once talking about this passage.
Yeah.
And I was like, what if we approached the kingdom of heaven and the work in the kingdom with a similar intensity.
Right, exactly.
We were willing to sacrifice at the same level or more than we did for our business.
Exactly.
And because her and I were like working this thing together for 3 years.
Yeah.
And she was like, I kind of like that idea, you know,
Yeah.
because there's back to the faith of the mustard seed. There's that singularity of mind. It's
Exactly,
what are
yeah.
you about? Are you tailoring your whole world to this end? You know, like, so I think, you know, so as part of that, you think about your home. Is your home a place that is conducive to raising children in godliness?
Sure.
To making disciples with those who are not of your household?
Yeah.
You know, can you do hospitality? Any inhibitor to being a Romans 12 Christian,
Right, yeah.
and 1 Corinthians 13 Christian, what are those inhibitors? Remove those, but also then whatever resources and assets you have, bring them to bear. And so, yeah, it kind of goes, but have that all-in mindset.
Exactly.
You know, a friend of mine who's an elder in the church now, he calls it the burn the boats mindset.
Sure, yeah.
There is no going back. There's no path out. It's just forward with Christ. And, yeah, and that goes back to the gospel. You know, being shodding your feet with the gospel of peace.
Sure, yeah.
It's like, no, we go forward. We don't go backwards.
Exactly.
So,
Or like you referenced Romans 12:1, right? Being that living sacrifice. So you're choosing every day
yeah.
that you want to pursue this thing.
Right.
Right. And one of the things I love that you mentioned is you made it very practical, right? It's like, what does that look like? You know, today and in the age we live in, it's very much finding out what are the resources that I have that I can leverage this. And I'll even make it even more specific. One of the things, whenever my parents, you know, we almost moved around for a couple of things because due to my dad's work, and the first thing they always checked is, hey, is this in an area where there's a church? Like that was the first thing they checked. Is the church not far? We don't want to have to drive an hour and a half or an hour because the more difficult you make something, it's going to be harder to keep that commitment just by the nature of it being difficult.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to make that barrier as easy as possible that they can easily say there's a church there. So that's one thing. And then the second thing they says, okay, if we have a house, can I have a house that's big enough that we can invite either half the congregation or the entire congregation, depending on the size of the congregation.
Right. Sometimes they get really big. It's not even
Exactly.
possible.
For the Church of Tidewater, you know, we can easily fit 40 people. If you go to like Temple Terrace in Florida, 600, it's going to be very hard, right? You'd need a whole compound.
Yeah.
So, right.
500 people is a lot.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but that's the mindset is, okay, that's them thinking, here's
Right.
the thing that I want to leverage for God. I'm going to orient my life around that and make sure the things that I have are going to be towards that. Now, maybe something different for you. Maybe you have some, you know, a different talent that God's given you, but it's that same mindset. Whatever that talent is, then orient your life by asking the questions. How can I use this for God? Hey, am I going to be in close proximity to those who are Christians? Right? That's going to be the way you can make this a reality for you.
Right, absolutely, and as part to that idea of going all in and leveraging what you have is there's also, you know, living in community. You know, like the first question is, where's the church building that people ask, and a lot of times they just stop there.
Right.
You know, okay, the church building is close enough, blah blah.
Sure.
But another question that I would encourage us to ask is, where are the brethren?
Yeah.
Because we often think about church. Sadly, we think very superficially.
Sure.
Not all of us, but some of us think
Right,
very
right.
superficially about this. Okay, so I show up and I worship 2-3 times a week or whatever. You know, if they have evening worship or not.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
And we kind of approach it from our preferences perspective and how will we be how we will be
Are the
served.
people my age around? Like sometimes we do those a little more selfish.
Right. It's how can I be served by that congregation? Does it meet my needs?
Sure.
And,
Yeah.
And you know, if it cannot meet any of your spiritual needs, like whatsoever, like if it's just a very corrupt group of humans, okay, fair enough.
Sure. Yeah.
But the
Barring the extremes.
right, barring the extremes.
Yeah.
The really deep question is, how is it that I can go there and serve?
Yeah.
How can I be of service in that community?
Right,
And how good is that community at being a community? You know, everybody lives on the same block, but they never talk to each other. That's not a community.
Yeah.
Here at Tidewater, we're kind of scattergunned across, you know, across the region, and yet there's community here, which is kind of funny because it's like, well, it's because we're actually comfortable driving an hour to see each other.
Yeah.
You know, we must be a bunch of Midwesterners because that's a very Midwestern attitude.
Sure. Yeah.
Like in Connecticut, if you drove 20 minutes, people were like, "Oh, that's just too far," like they'd act like a 20-minute drive was just forever. And I'm
Exactly.
like, you're clearly nuts, you know, because you know we have cars, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, but it's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, like and here because of this region. This region seems to think of itself as a unit, which is, but it's a huge geographical space.
Right.
But for whatever reason, the culture is just comfortable with it being a unit. And so people don't think, oh, I'm just going to, like here in Chesapeake, I don't think, oh, I'm going to go to North Norfolk. It's so far. It doesn't feel like a thing. It's just like, yeah, I'm just going to Norfolk. It's no big deal.
Exactly.
And over to Virginia Beach later. And okay, cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's understand the area you're going into and how they ask the question, in what way can I be of service there?
Right. Yeah.
And don't presume that you have the answers to that. Just understand, just start looking for the opportunity. I've been here for 7 months ish.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of things I know how to do.
Right.
But I didn't just go, well, I'll just do that. Because there are others here who there's a Venn diagram between our skill sets. I'm like, oh, cool. Didn't you do that? Because you look for things that only you can do. That's like definitely your sweet spot.
Sure.
If it's unique to you, but it needs doing, then absolutely you're the one to do it. And if you're one of 5 doing it, then start figuring out how to get in with that group and start serving together as a team. And that's how you build together.
Absolutely. And if you don't know what your skill set is, maybe you're just a new Christian and you're just not used to that. Well, find out how, like what Patrick said, what you can do to help others. Hey, someone's being very hospitable. Maybe I can say, hey, I can run things for you. Like, you need to get this, I'll just get that. That's a huge help. So find the way to align yourself with the talents of others and being their help. And that's a great way to start if you are still kind of learning, hey, what's the talent that God's given me?
Right. A great example of that would be like, at this point, like sometimes your mom's got arthritic stuff that flares up. So sometimes I imagine it's not that great for her moving around.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But she's very hospitable. Well, if you're a young lady who's trying to figure that out, hanging out with her and just being her hands.
Sure.
And her, because you can just pick stuff up and run with it.
Exactly.
And so she can like show you how, and so you're actually double service. You're engaging in double service there. Because I get the sense your mom likes to have people around.
Sure, yeah.
She loves she's very hospitable. So it's like you're helping her do the things she loves to do anyway, that she's really skilled at. And then at the same time, you're being mentored to become like her. And on it goes. It's like pick anything, it's any skill, any Romans 12 thing, and then find someone who's doing it if you want to get better at it.
Right.
And then, you're a great example. I'm going to call Jared out here and embarrass him. He was not easily embarrassed, but you're a great example of being able to take feedback. Like you're really good at just like humbly receiving information, processing that, and trying to make application from it.
Sure.
So like if like this is one reason I love hanging out with Jared, because for our listener, because it teaches me how to be more chill about that kind of it. It's kind of a training and a type of humility, an aspect of humility. And there are other brethren among us who are humble in other ways. And so like hanging out with a group of us is useful because it teaches us across dimensions.
Right.
We're a little off topic here, for our parable, but this is the sort of the broad thing of being in the kingdom together.
Exactly. Of trying to find, to tie it back, this is just practical ways you can find that pearl and sell all that you have for it.
Go all in with it.
Exactly. Alrighty, so let's go to our last day's reading. So that will be Friday's reading, and that will be when Jesus calms the storm. Alrighty, so we have Matthew 8, verses 23 through 27.
Okay.
And it reads... Now, when he got into a boat, his disciples followed him, and suddenly a great tempest arose on the sea, so that the boat was covered with the waves. But he was asleep. Then his disciples came to him and awoke him, saying, Lord, save us, we are perishing. Then he said to them, Why are you fearful, O you of little faith? Then he arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. So the men marveled, saying, Who can this be, that even the winds and the sea obey him? Then the next one is found in Mark chapter 4, verses 35 through 41.
Okay. And on that day, when evening came, he says to them, Let us go over to the other side. And leaving the crowd, they take him along with them in the boat, just as he was, and other boats were with him. And a great windstorm rises up, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling up. And Jesus himself was in the stern, sleeping on the cushion. And they get him up and say to him, Teacher, do you not even care that we are perishing? And he woke up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Silence, be still. And the wind died down, and it became perfectly calm. And he said to them, Why are you so cowardly? Do you still have no faith? And they became very afraid and were saying to one another, Who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him?
Then the last one will be found in Luke chapter 8, verses 22 through 25. And it reads, "Now it happened on a certain day that he got into a boat with his disciples, and he said to them, 'Let us cross over to the other side of the lake.' And they launched out, but as they sailed, he fell asleep, and a windstorm came down on the lake, and they were filling with water and were in jeopardy. And they came to him and awoke him, saying, 'Master and Master, we are perishing.' Then he rose and rebuked the wind and the raging of the water, and they ceased, and there was a calm. But he said to them, 'Where is your faith?' And they were afraid and marveled, saying to one another, 'Who can this be? For he commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him.'" All right, so Jesus calms the water. And it's always, like I said, I think we've said this many times. But that's the good thing about our reading. Shout out to the Tidewater Church of Christ reading program if you want to follow along. It's on our website, right? TidewaterChurchofChrist.com.
It's somewhere.
Plug in.
Yeah, you can
Exactly.
get there.
Yeah, you can find it. You can download PDF, all that stuff. So check us out. Shameless plug.
Put that in the description.
Exactly. There you go. With like a little finger click on it. Yeah. So what's great about it is that it gives us this context, right? We got to see it from three different angles, from Matthew, from Mark, and from Luke. And so obviously Luke, being him as a very detailed person, gives a very detailed account of events of what happened when he says he wants to go to the other side. Then they start going. But one of the key things that I liked here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it was in the other two, was that the boat was beginning to fill with water. So beginning to understand why the disciples in there were a little dire in their explanation. Like, this wasn't just, oh yeah, it's storm, bumpy boat. It's like no, it was filling with water, and this is the idea that they're sinking, and then Jesus just rebukes it all. So I thought that was a big difference.
Well, Mark says that the boat
Does Mark
was,
say it too?
yeah, it was already filling up.
Okay, cool.
So Mark throws it out there.
Okay,
as
so Mark
well.
and Luke confirm that.
Yeah, the boat, and Luke says the boat was being covered with waves, but Jesus was sleeping.
Yeah.
So there's this high
Yeah.
intensity moment for them that they're kind of freaking out.
Yeah.
Luke says that they're and they began to be swamped and in danger.
Yeah.
So he calls out, like, this is actually dangerous.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a really powerful scene.
Yeah.
And they ask a really important question at the end. What kind of man is this that even the
Yeah.
winds and the sea obey him? Who is this? And Marcus says, who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him? And so does Luke. Who then is this that he commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him? And the answer is, he is the creator of the winds and the water.
Right. Yeah.
And that's actually why this is here. It's a point. Mark, I always called Mark the executive summary gospel.
Sure. Yeah.
And Mark is making the point that
Yeah.
he is master. Like, if you read through Mark, you'll see that he is demonstrating that Jesus is master over all things. And each story is recounting an aspect of the things over which he is
Right.
master. And here he's master over the elements. And what's also funny to me is Jesus is just catching a nap. Like,
Yeah.
he's just like, he's so tired. They say they took him as he is. It's like there was no prep. They just up and went. And he's had actually high intensity
Yeah.
days.
He's been doing a lot.
He's been working nonstop, not eating and stuff. And he's just napping in the front of the boat on a cushion. He's just like, I'm just chilling. And, and, he's not even bothered by the fact that the storm is happening, because,
Right.
and I think that's kind of his point. He's like, why are you guys cowardly? Why is your faith so weak that you can't understand that, that I'm the one who's in control here,
Yeah.
and that's a very strong rebuke that he's given them, actually.
Sure.
But it's kind of like, that's a tough message. But yeah, let's see here, going over to Luke, because I think Luke here, Master, get up, we're perishing. Where's your faith?
Yeah. This is from Luke. It's very direct. Like,
Yeah, where are you?
Yeah.
Where's your deal? What's your deal?
yep.
But they're like, we're dying in his back to the faith of the mustard seed.
Yeah.
It's focused on the thing, and in his demeanor here is, why don't you understand what you're into here? Why are you so cowardly? You men of little faith, he says in the Matthew account.
Right. Yeah.
And then he rebukes the wind and sea. It's like that's a thing. Like, can you
Yeah.
imagine? Pictures, you're in the scene. The water's coming in. You're being
Sure.
swamped. Full well people die on this sea. because the winds rush off the mountains and kick and kick the water into high
Sure.
stuff, and this is why this is happening. And then you wake up, Jesus. You're like, don't you even care that we're perishing? Save us, Lord. We're perishing, and that's also quite the thing to say. Don't you even care that we're perishing? Like, I think that's
Right,
one of the accounts. That's like kind of the message. To which that does sort of demand rebuke. Yeah, Master, we are perishing. That's the Luke account, and I'm over here going into Mark account again.
Right.
Jesus was sleeping.
Yeah.
He says, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And here he says, so Mark has him rebuking the wind and it being still, and then him saying, "Why are you so cowardly? Do you have no faith?" And Matthew, they flip it, regardless of the order of operations. And actually two things could happen simultaneously. They could say, "Don't you care that we're perishing?" And he's like, "Why are you of such little faith?" And then he rebukes the wind and he chastens them for their little faith. "Why are you such a coward? Don't you know?"
Sure.
Kind of thing. But it does demand a rebuke. "Don't you care that we're perishing?"
Sure.
Demands a rebuke. Like they did incite that, and they were rebuked for it. But picture you're one of these sailors on this water. You're pretty sure you're going to die. Here Jesus is. You've seen him do these miracles, and
Right.
you're like, "Hey, you're just sleeping. Like we're going to die out here, and you're doing nothing." And then he does something, and the whole world goes to peace. Like it's just it goes from chaos to perfectly still water, and water doesn't go perfectly still. That's the other thing too, is like, you ever see like a lake go glassy?
Sure. Yeah.
It's rare, right? And sort of like that's neat.
Yeah.
Because it's usually on the move. Here we went from a storm to glassy, and and winds to nothing. So it's perfectly still because he that's what he just told it to do. And I think the response is perfectly valid. Like, who are we hanging out with right now?
Yeah.
No one can just still the waves.
Sure,
No one can make water go glassy. That's just.
And that's the cool thing about this is the first major point here is this is building this is one of the things that the Jews criticized Jesus of, right? Hey, he forgives sins. Well, who can forgive sins other than God? Because they haven't made the connection yet. And
Right.
and there's other things he's doing. You mentioned like the miracles, all the different healings.
Right.
And so now he's just going through the realms of like, hey, not only can I forgive sins, but I can heal people, and not only that, but all of creation is under my power. So it's like building this case further of how it almost makes the passage where it says the witness. When God uses the witnesses in the Old Testament for the covenant between the children of Israel, it's like you can see that like it's almost like a physical manifestation of that with Jesus of like, hey, everything is in obedience to Him. Listen to Him.
Yeah.
So you see that kind of case built there. That I think is just
I love that.
fascinating. There.
That's absolutely right. Here, the nature is testifying.
Yeah.
To your point and can you really? That is a strong testimony.
Exactly.
Because when a storm passes and it goes calm,
Yeah.
like naturally when it does it, it feels very surreal. Especially if
Sure.
it's been a really or a hurricane is like that. Have you ever been in a hurricane?
Yeah.
And if the eye passes over you, it's weird.
Yeah.
Right. It goes from like total chaos to not anything, and then chaos comes again. But yeah, and having experienced that, it's just like, it's kind of similar, but here it's even more because there's no second chaos. There's no, it's actually just calm. And then he's just, but then he makes this demand upon them to be brave,
Right.
and to have faith that he has them. At the end of his, as he's approaching the cross, he does tell them, I've been taking care of you.
Right.
And I'm not going to be around to do that anymore. So you're going to have to do some basic things for yourself. So there's a kind of a sense in which he's engaging in an extra level of care for them that is beyond what we experience today.
Right.
So that's another reason why he's like, what is your problem?
Sure.
I have a mission for you. You just don't understand it yet. And it's like these apostles who he's going to send out after his death,
Right.
They don't even know how golden they are in this moment.
Sure. Exactly. Yeah.
He's got them in more than they could imagine, and because they're not going to die, because he's not going to let them.
Sure. Yeah.
He's like, John, you're going to have to go. You're going to go a long time, John. I'm not going to let you die, not for a long time.
Yeah.
And the rest of them, they die, faster than John. He makes it the longest.
Yeah.
But it's like, that they all make it because he has a plan for them.
Right.
So
Yeah. No, the other thing I think is also cool too is I love when we talked about their response, like, "Hey, do you even care?" And the Jesus response, you know, "Do you have any faith?" And then also Jesus' response is, "Oh, it's a nice little storm to sleep in," right? And he's just having a nice quick nap for all the stuff that you know. That
I actually
that
like
he's done.
sleeping in a storm, so I'm like,
Yeah, there you go. So
relatable.
you're one step closer there. And so, but what you see here is you see the two different responses of how you respond to the storms of life, right? You have people who will say, well, you know, that's a guttural response. I think almost all of us, whenever we've perceived someone causing us some pain or just the things of life, you know, we'll say shake our fist at the sky or the other person. Do you even care, right? That's just a natural human response. And then you have Jesus just sleeping and then obviously able to make all those things nice and calm. I love connecting this story with John. And I forgot where it is in John, but it's basically where Jesus says, "Peace I leave you, my peace I give to you. But not as the world gives, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid." And this is the example you go to where Jesus is sleeping during a storm. And because he has that peace with God, he can do that. And obviously being God incarnate as well. But that's the same feeling we can have. And that's what Jesus promises, that he will give us peace. But not like the world gives. And so that doesn't mean that Jesus is saying you'll never have any problems. Far from it. He's just saying when the storms occur, you have the choice to lean on him, and then you can sleep through that storm of life. Or you can be like the other sailors and stress about it and let it consume you. Mm-hmm. And then you'll be, mad at God, mad at others of saying, dude, does anyone even care?
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's the cool, when you connect it with that, we can easily see how it's just a beautiful, harmonious message of which peace do you want? Do you want the peace of the world, which is not really it's a false peace? Or do you want the peace of God, which is not going to be like the world peace? It doesn't mean you're not going to have any trouble. Right. But it just means that God can take care of you in those storms.
Yeah. See the book of Job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, for a very long illustration of that
problem. Yeah. Yep. 100%.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well said, brother. I love it.
Hey, thank you. I think that's all the readings, right? Did we finish it all?
I think that's all.
Perfect. Alrighty. So that will conclude our week 14 podcast at the Tidewater Stream. So thank you so much for tuning in. And I think we'll still be doing next week because the gospel meeting's not till a couple weeks.
Yeah, we're on schedule. So
perfect. We'll
just be pulsing out for that.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And we're hoping that we're going to have a gospel meeting with Ryan Moyer or
Boyer with a B.
Ryan Boyer. So yeah, so that's going to be a special treat. We're going to try to see if we can get him on the podcast if he's willing. But the dates are, I'll make sure to put up a flyer up so that people see April 17th through the 19th.
Yep.
Ryan Boyer.
Yep.
And he's going to be talking to us about what exactly? Is it more gospel stuff?
It's a grab bag of things. Okay. So put the flyer up and
yeah, exactly. If you're in town, if you've
take your pick
hit this channel and you're wondering, oh hey, I want to check us out. Hey, there'll be a flyer. We would love to have you. If you're passing through and you need a good congregation to attend, Tidewater Church of Christ, especially during that week, we'd love to have you. So, but with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
God bless.